The book of Isaiah is one of the most influential texts in Western civilization, but most of it probably wasn't written by Isaiah. That's not a modern skeptic's claim. It's the mainstream scholarly consensus, and understanding why makes the book far more interesting. To see how scholars reach this conclusion, we need to start with the real Isaiah, a man who walked the halls of power in Jerusalem during one of the ancient world's greatest crises. Isaiah was active in the second half of the 8th century BCE, a contemporary of the prophets Amos and Hosea. He operated in the southern kingdom of Judah, based in Jerusalem. The geopolitical situation was dire. The Assyrian Empire, centered in Mesopotamia with its capital at Nineveh, was expanding aggressively westward. The small kingdoms of the Levant stood directly in its path. The northern kingdom of Israel, with its capital at Samaria, would fall to Assyria in 722 BCE. Judah was next in the crosshairs. Isaiah was no marginal figure shouting from the wilderness. He had direct access to the royal court and personally counseled Judah's kings through two existential crises. The first crisis came in 734 BCE under King Ahaz. Here's the surprising twist. It wasn't Assyria besieging Jerusalem. It was Aram's, modern-day Syria, and the northern kingdom of Israel. They marched south to force Judah into an anti-Assyrian military coalition. When Ahaz refused to join, they tried to overthrow him. Ahaz panicked. Instead of trusting in Judah's own defenses, or in God as Isaiah urged, he sent tribute northeast to the Assyrian emperor Tiglath-Pileser III, begging for help. It worked. Assyria crushed both Aram and Israel. But the price was steep. Judah became an Assyrian vassal, a subordinate kingdom paying tribute to a dominant empire. Both Isaiah and the Deuteronomistic historian, the biblical editor responsible for the books of Joshua through Kings, condemned Ahaz for this decision. The second crisis came in 701 BCE under King Hezekiah. This time Assyria itself was the enemy. Hezekiah had rebelled against Assyrian control, and Emperor Sennacherib responded with overwhelming force. His army swept through the Judean countryside, destroying city after city. We don't have to take the Bible's word for this. It's confirmed archaeologically. The famous Lachish reliefs carved for Sennacherib's palace in Nineveh depict the siege and destruction of Lachish, one of Judah's most important fortified cities, in graphic detail. Jerusalem itself survived, but only after Hezekiah paid enormous tribute. Isaiah counseled Hezekiah throughout this ordeal. These are real, historically verifiable events, confirmed in both Assyrian records and archaeological evidence, that anchor the first part of the book of Isaiah. So that's the historical Isaiah, a prophet embedded in real geopolitics, advising kings through genuine military crises across a career spanning more than 50 years. But when you open the book of Isaiah, you find far more than one man's words. The book spans 66 chapters, and scholars have long recognized that its tone, setting, and historical assumptions shift dramatically as you move through it. Understanding that shift is the key to understanding how prophetic books were composed in ancient Israel. Chapters 1 through 39 contain the historical Isaiah's core material, but even this section isn't uniform. Chapters 1 through 12 hold Isaiah's memoirs and oracles, his direct words and experiences. Chapters 13 through 23 collect oracles against foreign nations, some from Isaiah, some added later. Chapters 24 through 27 are called the Little Apocalypse. Apocalyptic meaning a genre of prophetic literature focused on cosmic end times visions. Most scholars date this section to the 6th century BCE, well after Isaiah's lifetime. Chapters 28 through 33 return to oracles about Egypt and Assyria from the period approaching 701. Chapters 34 and 35 are post-exilic insertions written after the Babylonian exile ended in 539 BCE, and chapters 36 through 39 parallel 2 Kings almost word for word. Now the decisive evidence. At chapter 40, everything changes. The dominant empire is no longer Assyria, it's Babylon. The Assyrian Empire fell in 612 BCE. Chapters 40 through 55, known as Second Isaiah, assume a world where Babylon rules and Israel lives in exile. This material presupposes a geopolitical reality that the historical Isaiah never lived to see. There's a gap of roughly 150 years between Isaiah's death and the world these chapters describe. Chapters 56 to 66, called Third Isaiah, span even later into the 5th century BCE, the post-exilic period under Persian rule. The Book of Isaiah is an anthology, a collection of writings by multiple authors compiled over time. The extended timeline makes the case visually. Isaiah's career spans roughly 740 to 690 BCE, the Assyrian period, then silence. The Assyrian Empire falls in 612. Jerusalem falls to Babylon in 586. The exile begins. Second Isaiah writes during the Babylonian period, around 550 to 540 BCE. Third Isaiah extends into the Persian period as late as 450 BCE. That's nearly 300 years from the historical Isaiah to the final layers of the book. No single author wrote across that span. Multiple voices working within a continuous prophetic tradition built this text over centuries. There's another piece of evidence. Isaiah chapter 2 verses 2 through 4 and Micah chapter 4 verses 1 through 4 contain nearly identical text. The mountain of the Lord's house beat their swords into plowshares. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. The same passage in two different prophetic books. Similarly, Jeremiah 48 parallels Isaiah 15 and 16. This isn't plagiarism. It reveals how prophetic schools worked, circulating and compiling oracles that remained relevant across generations. Understanding the anthology model doesn't diminish Isaiah. It reveals how prophetic traditions were living traditions maintained by communities of disciples who saw continuing relevance in their master's words and added to them across centuries. Isaiah's words were so valued that generations of followers preserved, expanded, and applied them to new crises. And that's evidence of more influence, not less. Here's a practical tool for reading Isaiah. When you encounter any passage, ask one question. Who is the dominant empire here, Assyria or Babylon? That single question unlocks the book's layered composition. The book of Isaiah is a window not into one prophet's mind, but into centuries of Israelite theological reflection,